Once again, welcome everyone. As I mentioned previously, today's webinar is sponsored by the New York State and CSEA Partnership for Education and Training, or as many people refer to it, just the partnership. You might be wondering, what is the partnership exactly? And for those of you who are less familiar with us, the partnership is an organization that administers education and training programs for CSEA-represented employees through labor management cooperation. It's negotiated agreements between New York State and CSEA. So first, in-person classroom training, online learning, annual advisement services, grants, tuition benefits, labor management services, and other education and training programs, including what you're attending today. The partnership is a joint labor management organization whose mission is to promote career mobility, improve job skills, support workplace safety and health, and promote effective labor management relations. You can learn more about us on our website, calling us, and I'll be providing both of those contact information, pieces of information again at the end of today's webinar. We all know a little bit more about the partnership, but let's get started with our Merit Systems Transfers webinar. I'm going to turn the presentation over to your first instructor, Taylor.
Welcome everybody, and thank you for being here today. As Jess Rossman said, my name is Taylor Barwinski, and I will be presenting this webinar. I'm also joined today by my colleague, Jessica Hinkle. We work in the Career Mobility Office, which is located within the Department of Civil Service. The Career Mobility Office takes policy direction and program administration from the Governor's Office of Employee Relations and the Department of Civil Service and receives funding from CSEA and PES. Our office was created to provide employees with assistance to help them stay continuously employed in the face of organizational changes, to educate employees on the merit system and the system with mobility options. I'd like to start by asking each of you a question. Do you think you are able to transfer more than once in your career?
Our answer Taylor's first question, I'm going to have you use the green check mark next to that raise hand button if you think the answer is yes, you can transfer more than once. Or you're going to click on the red X if you think the answer is no. And I see we have some filtering into the chat as well, so I'm going to count those. Oh, the unanimous across the board, Taylor. Everyone is saying yes.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm very glad to hear that because the answer is yes. You are able to transfer more than once in your state career. If you the transfer criteria, you can laterally transfer as often as you would like. And we will explain more about this and other rules and criteria for transfer as we go through this webinar today. Talk about what you can expect in today's webinar. This course will use civil service terminology in order to explain the process of transfers and eligibility. Some terminology you may already know, while some of it may be new to you. If you have any questions throughout this webinar, please feel free to use the raise hand button or chat panel at any time. We've also included definitions of terms in your handout. That's why we're here today. We'll talk about the different types of transfers and when each type may be applicable, the eligibility requirements of transfer, explore available resources to determine your transfer opportunities, and determine how to pursue transfer opportunities and where to look for vacancies. So this information may create questions about your specific eligibility and salary. However, there are some topics that we will not be able to address during this webinar. First is individual questions about your personal work history or career interests. We know that everyone's situation is different, so we need you to contact our office where we can individually discuss your personal questions in more detail. Our contact information will be located at the end of this PowerPoint presentation. We're also not able to discuss questions related to salary. Salary determinations are made by the hiring agency and Office of the State Comptroller. So if you ever have any questions about salary, you will need to start by contacting your hiring agency. Contact information for the various agency human resources offices can be located using the phone directory link shown at the bottom of your screen. You can also call the Business Services Center with payroll questions, as the Business Services Center administers payroll functions for a variety of state agencies. And we've listed their website on this slide as well for you. All right, so time for another question. Do you know the jurisdictional class of your current position? We have these jurisdictional classes on your screen. We have competitive, non-competitive, labor, and exempt.
To answer Taylor's question, you're going to use that green check mark and the red X again. So if you know the jurisdictional class of your current position, go ahead and click the green check mark for me. And if you're not sure, go ahead and click that red X. Okay, next answer is here, so let me take a moment to really take a look at the results. And it looks like we've got 6 people that are saying yes, and about 5 that are saying no, and then that are sure in the middle here.
Okay, that's completely normal, and we're going to talk about them more in just a brief moment, but if you're ever not sure, you're always welcome to contact our office, and we can pull you up in our system individually and discuss what your jurisdictional class is and what that means for you. To understand your career mobility options, including transfers, to start first with the basics. 4 different types of position classifications, which are also called jurisdictional classes. Jurisdictional class determines how a position is filled. 80% of positions are filled by those who have taken an exam. Exams fill competitive class positions, and you compete for them through the examination process. The non-competitive, labor, and exempt jurisdictional classes do not require a written exam, but may require specific qualifications. Why is this important? Only those in the competitive class are eligible to transfer. If you're in a competitive class position, don't worry, you can always sign up for exams for which you qualify for additional mobility options. Our webinar can still be helpful for you to understand your options once you get into a competitive class position. Again, if you're not sure what type of position you're in or what your current jurisdictional class is, that's okay. You're welcome to give our office a call. We'll be happy to review your employment history and to let you know your current status. You can also check with your Human Resources office to learn this information. Agencies fill competitive positions on a permanent basis in a couple of different ways. We'll discuss these ways more now. First, agencies can fill competitive positions with an appointment off an eligible list. This means that they hire an individual from a list of candidates who took the examination. An agency can also choose to reinstate an individual who previously held the position with the state. And finally, an agency also has the option to choose a transfer candidate, and that is the topic we'll really be discussing in depth today. Agencies are not required to choose one of these 3 methods to fill a position over another. An agency's choice how they choose to fill a position. However, there may be a number of considerations as to why an agency picks one appointment mechanism over another. It's important to be aware that there may be reemployment lists, such as preferred lists, reemployment rosters, agency reduction transfer lists, that's also an article, may be in place for a specific field in a specific area. These lists have names of employees displaced from their positions through a closure, consolidation, or reduction in force. These mandatory lists must be used first before any other form of appointment, whether that be eligible list, transfers, or reinstatement. So let's talk more about transfers now. Let's be talking about the difference between reassignment and transfer. We found that these two concepts are often confused. Assignment is when an employee is moved to another program area or division within their same agency in their same title. So, for example, an office assistant 1 at Department of Motor Vehicles could be reassigned from a human resources division to finance division. An employee can request a reassignment. However, an agency has the option to reassign staff based on agency need. Transfer is the appointment of a permanent competitive employee from one title to a different title or from one agency to a different agency. Transfer is voluntary and occurs with the consent of the employee after nomination by the appointing agency and approval of the Department of Civil Service. All employee cannot be held back by their current agency from transferring into another agency. As mentioned, transfer is a career mobility opportunity for employees. If you are interested in being reassigned, which we mentioned first, the step we would recommend would be to contact your human resources office. Agencies have their own process in place for reassignment, so it's important that you begin your reassignment search with them. So now let's touch knowledge. Let's read through the to-know on the screen together, and then I'd like to answer a question in the polling panel. Dominique is an Administrative Assistant 1 at the Department of Motor Vehicles. She's to apply to another Administrative Assistant 1 position at the Department of Transportation. What type of move would she be making? Would be A, reassignment, B, cross-county move, a transfer, or D, all of the above?
I have opened a poll on the right-hand side of your screen. I see some of you have already started answering, which is excellent. For those who haven't yet, go ahead and take your mouse and click on the option A, B, C, or D that you think is correct. And I'll give you all 10 seconds or so to this. Just make sure you're clicking that submit at the bottom right-hand side. Other of you are stuck in progress limbo, and it will be difficult for me to close the poll. Oh, perfect. It looks like I got everyone. And let me see. I've shared the results, and it looks like option C got 10, so half of the votes. Next most popular answer was option A, reassignment, which got 6 out of 22. And we got 2 votes for cross-country move, but none for all of the above.
Awesome. Well, this is definitely a tricky question, and if you answered C, transfer, you are correct. It would be a transfer. Even though Dominique is staying in the same title, in this case, Administrative Assistant 1, the fact that she is moving to a different agency altogether is what makes it a transfer. If perhaps she were staying at the Department of Motor Vehicles, but moved from perhaps branch to another branch, that might be considered a reassignment. But again, in this case, she is changing agencies, so that is what makes it a transfer.
I mentioned before we move off this slide that when I open the polling panel, your chat and participant panels may have closed. And in order for you to ask questions or raise your hand, you're going to want to take a moment now to reopen them. And to do that, you're going to go to the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and you're going to click on the participants icon twice, do the thing with the chat, and you should be all set. All right, back to Taylor.
This law defines 3 different types of transfer, and we refer to them based on the section of the law that they are in. So there's 70.1, 50.6, and 70.4. It's important to know these different types of transfer and the ones that you qualify for, because this is often how they are referred to in the minimum qualifications section of a vacancy posting. Before we discuss one of these types in more detail, though, we want to provide you with the requirements that are necessary for an employee to be eligible to transfer in general. So as mentioned before, transfer is a mobility option only available to permanent competitive state employees. There are both general requirements to be eligible for all types of transfer, as well as specific requirements depending on the type of transfer. The general requirements apply to all three types of transfers, and they are listed here on your screen. Generally, the employee will need to have permanent service for 1 year in a competitive position. The transfer may not be to a title that is more than 2 salary grades or 1 M grade higher than their current title. The employee cannot keep transferring upwards. So as they transfer up 2 salary grades, they must take a test and receive a list appointment before eligible to transfer further upwards again. The employee may, however, transfer downward or laterally as far as they'd like. Keep in mind, transfer must be to approved titles, and we'll get into that a bit more when we discuss the specific requirements for each type of transfer. You will need to meet any special requirements or have special credentials if needed for the title. For example, a title might require a language proficiency or a typing test. Later in the presentation, we will bring to the Got It resource tool to show you how to research your approved transfer titles and what approved titles if it needs special credentials. And finally, no reemployment list is placed for the title being filled. Employees on these reemployment lists are considered first. On your screen, we have included a helpful link that provides additional information about transfers. The requirements that we've just went through are listed on this website too, and I often refer back to it myself. And now we have another fact or fiction question for you. How many of you think that transferring up 2 salary grades is considered a promotion?
Answer Taylor's question. This time you're going to actually click on that raise hand button if you think that transferring up 2 salary grades is considered a promotion. Put his hand if you think so. Okay, looks like we've got raised hands, a couple of check marks, which I'm going to take as a raised hand here, I think. I'm going to pick it in the chat. I said, and so it's a 2 grade jump. She's saying, no, it's not. So 6 people are saying yes, and the rest of the team is saying no.
Okay, this is definitely a tricky question and one that we often discuss when employees call our office. So actually the answer here is no. A common misunderstanding that we often hear is that a transfer up 2 salary grades is a promotion when technically it is not. And we'll explain this in a bit more depth on the following slide. So promotion, in terms of civil service definition, is when an employee takes a promotion test and is appointed from that list, which is a title that is at a higher salary grade. So as I mentioned earlier, transfer is the movement of an employee from one title to a different title or one agency to a different agency. In addition, a transfer occurs without the employee taking a promotion test. It must be within 2 salary grades or 1 M grade. Promotion may result in an upward movement of several salary grades. It's not just limited to 2. So this might be how an employee is appointed to an office assistant 2 grade 9 position from an office assistant 1 grade 6. So an example of transferring up 2 salary grades now. On your screen, employee named Terrence that is in an Office Assistant 2 keyboarding title. He is interested in transferring into a Taxpayer Services Representative 1 position. A Taxpayer Services Representative 1 is an approved transfer title for an Office Assistant 2 keyboarding job. If Terrence meets the additional requirements for transfer, would he be eligible to do this?
I would use the green check mark for yes for this question again, red X for no. So the question is, if Terrence meets the additional requirements for transfer, will he be eligible to make this move? Okay, let me take a look at the responses. And the class says yes, he will.
You got fantastic. The answer here is yes. So if Terrence meets the requirements for transfer, he will be eligible to transfer from a grade 9, he's at now, to a grade 11. Since this Assistant 2 keyboarding is approved to transfer to the Taxpayer Services Representative 1 title, and the hiring agency is interested in appointing him, he will certainly be eligible to transfer. Okay, based on the previous slide, Terrence made the move from the Office Assistant 2 keyboarding to the Taxpayer Services Representative 1 position. Terrence has now held the Taxpayer Services Representative 1 position for 2 years, and he's interested in making another move to gain additional experience. Terrence is interested in transferring from his Taxpayer Services Representative 1, which is a grade 11 position, to a program aide, which is a grade 13 position. Would he be able to do this?
Once you click on the green check mark at the bottom of the participants panel if you think the answer is yes, and click on the red X if you think the answer is no. Okay, get quick with these answers. Thank you. It looks like we have split decision. 3 are saying yes, and 7 are saying no.
Tricky question, and something that we often also discuss with employees. So the answer here is actually no. So Terrence had made a transfer from the Office Assistant 2 keyboarding grade 9 to Taxpayer Services Representative 1 grade 11 title, not be eligible to make another transfer up salary grades to the program, which is a grade 13 position. As a top of your screen, we included a reminder of this transfer requirement, and I find the visuals are really helpful with this concept because it demonstrates that you're not able to keep transferring up without first receiving a list or an intervening list appointment. It's helpful to keep seeing what we mean by this. Let's look at the next slide. And Jess, could you walk us through this?
Definitely. Thank you very much, Taylor. So as we've learned, you can transfer from a grade 6 to a grade 8. Meaning you could be taking examinations and be appointed off of an eligible list to a grade 10. Once you meet your year requirement in this grade 10 title, you could transfer upward again to a grade 12. Does any questions just at this point regarding this or any of the other requirements for transfer? Word salad is a little bit difficult with these, but the pictures are really helpful.
Definitely. If you do have any questions, please click on that raise hand button at the bottom of the participants panel, or feel free to type it in the chat at any time. I am monitoring that to see if we have any questions. And any right now, but I will call your attention to it if I find one that comes in a couple minutes.
No problem. Thank you very much. All right, we've discussed the general requirements for transfer. Let's go ahead and take a look at the different types of transfer in a little bit more detail. The method of transfer is identified through Section 70.1 of Civil Service Law. This is the most common form of transfer. Type of transfer, the titles that you can move between are going to be similar in job duties, responsibilities, and tasks that you complete now in your job sometimes are also filled by the same examination. So if you need a direct service title, for example, the title to which that you can transfer to under Section 70.1 are also going to be in the direct service related field. To transfer to no additional, or Section 70.1 transfer, no additional examination is required for this type of transfer. So this example here on our screen, the direct support assistant provides direct care to individuals with developmental disabilities, and they can transfer to a mental health therapy aide or a rehab assistant 1. These all provide direct care. While the population may be different, the duties themselves that are involved in providing the care are similar. The transfer is identified through Section 52.6 of Civil Service Law. 52.6 allows for transfer between administrative titles. Administrative titles are usually classified as grade 18 and above, and they're going to be defined as those that involve such as law, personnel, budgeting, other methods and procedures, maybe management records analysis, specific types of research. Therefore, being in a title that's defined as administrative provides you with the opportunity to transfer to any other title that's also defined as administrative. Of course, that you meet the minimum requirements for transfer that we discussed earlier. On the slide here, we've also included a link to the title and salary plan. Just went ahead and pointed it out with a red arrow. The salary plan search engine, it's located also on the Civil Service website. You can use this search engine to view all Section 52.6 titles. There's a tutorial in your handouts on how to use this search engine.
Or printed your handouts yet, you can always do so after the webinar. To this, you will look back to the webinar invitation email that you received 3 weeks ago from Jean Grieber. Go ahead and type her name and email address into the chat box so that you can search your inboxes for it. Then you're going to find those handout attachments to that email. All right, back to you, Jess.
Thank you. Now that we reviewed 2 of the 3 different types of transfer, we'd like to go ahead and test your knowledge here. There's a study up on the screen. Let's go read through it, and then I'd like you to answer a question about the difference between Section 70.1 and 52.6. You answer this question using a arrow tool. So here, Zach is a program aide, which is a salary grade 13, at the Department of Transportation. He is interested in transferring to the title of Health Program Aide, also grade 13. Civil has determined that the program aide is a comparable or similar title to the health program aide. So be a Section 70.1 transfer or Section 52.6 transfer.
So you guys have seen me use that arrow with my name on it all along. That by going into the upper left-hand corner of my screen, just above the slide, you'll see there's an arrow pointing to the right. Charlene has found it. Excellent. So when you find it, click it, and then use it to point to whichever answer you think is correct. If that is not showing up for you, you can also use the chat box and just tell us which one you think is correct. Okay. Let's see.
All right, awesome feedback.
My arrow from Asia, but it looks like everyone is pretty much one.
Perfect. Absolutely. You guys are rock stars. The answer is Section 70.1 transfer, just like you said. In this case study, the title that Zach wants to transfer into is an approved Section 70.1 transfer because of the similarities, in titles, duties, responsibilities, and tasks. Does anybody have any questions regarding Section 70.1 or 52.6 transfers?
For questions at any time, you can type them into the chat box, or you can click on that raise hand button, and I can unmute you, and you can ask your question using your phone or a microphone attached to your computer. Any questions right now, though, Jess? So I think we're okay to move along.
All right, no problem. All right, go ahead and move on to our third type of transfer. Section 70.4 of Civil Service Law is a transfer option for employees that are looking to change career paths, or they don't really want to go into a title that isn't necessarily similar to the one that they're currently in. This type of transfer, the titles aren't typically similar at all, so therefore you need to take and pass an examination and fill the transfer title to demonstrate that you have all of the knowledge, skills, and abilities that are required for the position. This is one of the reasons why it is so important for us to take exams for qualified. Not only may it be possible to get hired from the list, but you could also be able to transfer under Section 70.4 based on having taken and passed the examination. While you're on the list, you can be proactive and reach out to see about a Section 70.4 transfer. And there are some requirements that you'll need to meet. So we'll go ahead and touch on those in just a moment. And here are the specific requirements for a Section 70.4 transfer are shown right here on the screen. Then an employee must also meet the general requirements for all transfers that we discussed a little bit earlier with Taylor. Let's review special Section 70.4 requirements. First, the must have an open competitive examination, which means an exam that is open to the public. And, well, sometimes titles are filled by both a promotion and transition exam for current state employees, as well as an open competitive exam for anybody who meets the minimum qualifications. Like a promotion or transition exam for this title, that would fulfill the second requirement. You take and pass an examination that's appropriate for the title, but you still need to make sure that you meet the qualifications for the exam that's open to the public. There's no viable promotion list. This means either there is no promotion list or there is a list. It does not have at least 3 individuals that are willing to accept the position. If there is an active promotion list, this would need to be used first. Last, you would need to be nominated by the appointing authority for a Section 70.4 transfer. All right, so we go here on the screen. Here's another short case study to test our understanding of Section 70.4 transfers, and we can go through it together. On the program aide, grade 13 for 3 years. He also received a bachelor's degree and has taken the Professional Careers Opportunities, or PCO, which is an open competitive exam. The list fills a variety of administrative traineeship titles which are equated to a grade 13, including Human Resources Specialist Trainee 1. Labor wants to hire Sasha as a Human Resources Specialist Trainee 1. Also, this will lead to a Human Resources Specialist 1, grade 18. So will Sasha be eligible to transfer into the title of Human Resources Specialist Trainee 1 under Section 70.4?
This one, again, you're going to use the green check mark at the bottom of the participants panel if you think the answer is yes, she's eligible to transfer, and click that red X if you think the answer is no, she's not. I'm seeing green check marks only here, not X's.
Fabulous. All right. Answer is yes. Let's go ahead and move on to the next screen for an explanation. Sasha is, just like you all said, eligible for a Section 70.4 transfer based on the following factors. Sasha has been in her title for at least 1 year. She's held it, like we said, for the past 3 years. Taken and passed the PC examination, and we know this because she's on the eligible list. That she's met the minimum qualifications for open competitive examination with a bachelor's degree in any field. and also passed an exam appropriate for the title. Soft is seeking transfer that's also within 2 salary grades of her current title. She's grade 13 as a program aide, and she's seeking to transfer into another grade 13. That was quite a bit of transfer jargon. Does anybody have any questions on section 70.4 at this time?
Feel free to raise your virtual hand or to type your questions into the chat at any time. Full job, Justin Taylor, because we don't have any questions so far.
Actually, I saw our participants are just that good.
Yeah, both are good.
Well, so let's take a look here. So additional information that is important when using transfer as a form of career mobility. First, when you transfer, you will be required to serve a probationary period unless it is waived by the hiring agency. While on probation, you would be given a mandatory leave of absence from your previous title and agency. This time, you have an opportunity to see if the job is a good fit for you, and then you can return to your previous title and agency if needed. Transfer is voluntary for both the agency as well as the employee. As an earlier, agencies can post to permanent competitive position with a transfer candidate. The employee needs to be proactive and search for vacancies. The resource is the State Jobs NY website, where a lot of state agencies post their vacancies. We can put this link on the bottom of the screen and just point out with a red arrow. If you will need to apply to the hiring agency by sending your resume and cover letter. If the agency is interested, they will go ahead and contact you. As mentioned earlier, you have the ability to view your possible transfer titles by using the Glossary of Titles Inquiry Tool, also known as Got It, website for the Career Mobility Office. And take a closer look at the Got It search feature now. There it is, a useful tool to search for state titles. If you conduct a title search in Got It, you will see title-specific information, including the job description, the minimum qualifications, the career ladder, and the title that you may be able to transfer into. And you can conduct an occupation search, an agency search, and a geographic search. On your screen here, we've included a screenshot of the Got It website, and on the bottom. Go ahead and take a field trip to Got It to understand how to navigate through the title search feature to view our transfer options.
All right, in just a second here, I am going to be sharing my screen, which means you'll see the Got It website through my screen. You'll be able to click on links by navigating through as direction. Here we go. Did that share?
Sorry, my computer was just catching up. Thank you very much. All right, let me see our Got It website. Let's go ahead and conduct a title search for an office assistant one. You can go ahead and type this in the title keyword search box, just like Jess is now, and hit the search button. We now see the title search results. Interesting.
I believe it might be because we typed I instead of the number 1. I know the system's a little finicky.
It is finicky, right?
We'll cancel that.
Exactly.
There we go.
This is one of the perfect. Nice catch, Taylor. All right. As we see, it brought up the titles that we're looking for, and we were looking for Office Assistant 1, so we're going to go right ahead and click on that. Earlier, using this title search will allow you to see title-specific information. So if we scroll down the page, on the right-hand side of the screen, we can see a green box showing possible 70.1 transfers. Let's click on that link at the bottom of that box there to view all transfers. These are the titles that an Office Assistant 1 transfer into. Not positions have titles that are 2 salary grades higher. There are a couple of additional titles that require special qualifications, and they're usually seen toward the bottom in smaller font. Regular title, there are no 52.6 transfer determinations because this title has not been deemed an administrative title under the rules we discussed previously. So I'm going to return to the slideshow now. Before we move on, though, does anybody have any questions at this time?
You all know by now, if you do, you can always raise your virtual hand or type it into the chat box. I'll do a quick scan to make sure I haven't missed anything. I think we're okay.
All right, so now that we have demonstrated how to title search on Got It, we just try it on your own. Let's take a look at the scenario on the screen and we'll read it together. Carl the test and was appointed as a motor vehicle representative. When he likes his job, he's interested in developing a new skill set and wonders what opportunities may be available to him through a transfer. We're going to go using information on Got It to find out the answer to his question. Perfect. So let's Got It to look at Carlos's transfer options here. Take a look at the image we placed on the screen. Can you tell me one of the jobs that he could possibly transfer into?
One of the titles Carlos could transfer into, go ahead and type it into the chat box and let us know. So one title that he could transfer into. Okay, some answers rolling in. Ebony says office assistant 2. Mary Beth echoes that, and so does Dana. Tax rep 1.
I love this. Yep, you definitely all have the correct area of the screen you've got. So you're going ahead and looking in that green possible 70.1 transfers box, and you typed in those, and you're all correct. You're on the live website. You also could have clicked, or Carlos also could have clicked the View Transfers link, and that, of course, would have brought him to the complete list of all of his transfer titles. And before we move on from this point, too, does anybody have any additional questions about it?
Well, we do. Raise your hand or type it in the chat, but I'm not seeing any, so I think that's all. I think we can move on.
Sounds great. We cover a lot of information today, so to help you remember the requirements for transfer, we have put together a chart that covers all of the basic points. We have this as one of the handouts, so please remember that this handout is just a general overview and explanation. There are some exceptions, so if you do have any questions about your specific eligibility, feel free to give us a call at the Career Mobility Office. We can look up your history and give you a personalized answer. Or you can call the Human Resources Office where you are going to apply for transfer. That about wraps things up for transfer today. I really want to thank you guys for joining all of us and for your participation. You guys really knocked it out of the park. You got everything right. You rock. I have a couple minutes before we close though to answer any questions you may have and to hear any additional thoughts and ideas. So before you move on to those though, I do want to turn this over to Jess Rossman, and she'll tell us more about upcoming webinars in the course evaluation.
Yes, and thank you, Taylor, you both for this really wonderful, informative webinar day. I think that folks are going to walk away with some good information and some good handouts. Don't forget, oh, I have a question about handouts. So yeah, Isaac, we can reach out to you with those again. So if you enjoyed the webinar today, I wanted to let you know, of course, that the partnership always has more webinars. We run these about 3 times a year in the spring, summer, and fall. So upcoming for the rest of the spring, we have, most of that one's probably closed. I'm going to start with Communicating with Confidence on May 4th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Using the Tuition Benefits Program, that's on May 6th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Take Control of Your Time on May 13th at 10 o'clock in the morning. So if this is interesting to you, any of the ones I just described are interesting to you, feel free to visit the partnership's website or to sign up to the statewide learning management system. All right, and one last note before we move on to that question and answer period. If you have a few minutes after you're done here today, we would really appreciate it if you would fill out our course evaluation. Our course evaluation will pop up in a new internet browser window once you close out of this window or once I end this session. And it will ask you to click continue to get to it. We do value your feedback. We read all of the evaluations, and we actually use it to improve not only this webinar, but our other webinars as well. So we really value your time. All right. I'm going to go ahead and I will just check and see now if we have any other questions. As said, you guys were really fantastic today, so I think you do have a good handle of on this. But if you do have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat as always, or to raise your hand. Oh, just popped in. Justin Taylor, I'm not sure which one of you would like to take the first one, but Charlene is asking, can you mention what the viable promotion list was about again?
Jess, you're welcome to add as well. So what we mean by a viable promotion list, it means basically an existing promotion list. So if it's viable, it means that there are more than 3 candidates on that list who are willing and eligible to accept appointment off a promotion list. It's not going to be viable or usable if there are fewer than 3 people who are willing to accept an appointment off that promotion list. Because at that point, by civil service definition, the list is broken so that they can move on to a new list or perhaps be looking at other candidates. So it's really what we are referring to with the promotion list. So I hope that helps.
Feel free to let us know if that, okay, so Charlene is saying it has to be 3 or more, and I think the other thing that she said that they have to be viable as in they're willing, one of 3 is willing to accept, right?
Yeah, or more, and then it's fewer than 3 where it would no longer be viable. So that's a tricky topic and question, but it was a very good question.
To remember too about lists is that when agencies are canvassing, they're going to, this is a really good question by the way. Lists, of course, are one of the staples of state employment, so we could go on forever, but agencies are not allowed to canvass from the statewide list that's on ELMS, the Eligible List Management System, on the public website. That's just for general reference. I know sometimes we get a lot of questions about that. But agencies are looking to hire, they order what's called a certified list, and that's really what they determine, you know, reachability and things like that. So that's where canvases and things like that come from. Just a heads up.
Excellent. So we do have the next question was from Veronica, and I'm not sure if Jess and Taylor can answer this, but I'm going to open to you. Maybe you can direct her to the right place to ask this question. It's about when will hiring freezes end?
Yeah, good question too. We can't directly answer it. Unfortunately, I don't feel like anyone is able to provide a definitive answer to this one. However, you know, it's a concern on everybody's mind. So thank you for asking, Veronica. It's based on a lot of different factors. The division of the budget is, you know, folks that initiated it to all of us last year. It's really for most agencies that are under the governor's jurisdiction. So it'd be, I think, really the big ones: Department of Motor Vehicles, Civil Service, you know, Department of Labor, agencies like that. The main ones, I should say, I'm using air quotes, but there are some agencies that don't necessarily go by that sort of section, I should say. So, in looking for vacancies in the more near future, there are some who don't go under the directive of the hiring freeze. So those would be ones like State Insurance Fund, the Comptroller's Office. They're, of course, under the Comptroller, the Attorney General. They're still hiring a little bit more than the other agencies because they don't have to follow that jurisdiction. But as far as when the hiring freeze is going to end, the one that was given to us by the Division of the Budget, unfortunately depends on state finances and when these can mission to fill a little bit more than we currently do. So good question. Unfortunately, it's just a waiting game at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Related question from Mary Beth. She's asking, when are more exams going to be offered? I assume it's related.
Yeah, another great question, and one we are getting frequently. Fortunately, we don't have a specific answer on when more exams are going to be offered. I can assure you, however, that it is of the utmost importance to our agency as a whole in the Department of Civil Service. It's a lot of what we're about. Are exploring ways that exams may be held safely, and looking at ways to do that sooner, hopefully rather than later, for your own mobility's sake. So my main advice to remain informed about new exams being announced is, if you haven't already, to up or subscribe to the exam announcement notification system. So if you go to the Civil Service Examinations page and you scrolled all the way towards the bottom, there should be a section where you would click to fill it out your personal email. You could also put in your work email, but typically I recommend people put in personal email just so they'll get that whenever exams are announced, regardless if they're at work or not. And then you will be notified via email whenever a new exam is announced. I'm also, of course, mostly speaking in terms of in-person examinations. There are some examinations, we refer to them as continuous recruitment examinations, where a little bit of a different format with exams. So rather than the typical pencil and paper type of exam that you might be imagining, a continuous recruitment exam is more like an application or a questionnaire format. And you would read the minimum qualifications on the examination announcement, and then if you felt you qualified, you would go ahead and apply. But like I said, that format's not going to be pencil and paper bubble sheet. It's really filling out your experience. So a lot of people are tending to look at those right now if they do qualify, because by continuous recruitment, we mean that those are titles that maybe the state has more flexibility to fill or is in greater need of. For example, direct care positions or nursing titles, things like that. And then that's a way that you could, after you filled out, you will be scored based on that application or questionnaire, because that is considered your exam. So be as thorough as possible with that. And then you may be active on some eligible lists from there. So that's just one other suggestion that I have in regards to exams. So I apologize if I was a bit long-winded, but there's a lot of info to learn about exams.
Informative. Mary, let us know if that has answered your question. I'm going to move on to the next one, which is from Ebony. She's asking, can 55B employees transfer without an exam?
Great, Ebony. So it's tricky because we talk a lot about, how only competitive employees can transfer, but when it comes to programs like the 55B and C program, the individuals are in competitive positions on a non-competitive basis. So because employees themselves are non-competitive and didn't take an exam, they technically cannot transfer. However, they apply to their transfer titles as a 55B candidate. So I'll give you an example because I know that's a lot of work. But say there's an office assistant 1 who is in the 55BC program, and they want to go to assistant 1, whatever. I guess, I don't know, human resources. They can go ahead and apply for the vacancy in question for office assistant 1, I don't know, human resources, and in that they're current office assistant 1 and they are part of the 55B program and are applying for that. What's happening is that it's really the hiring agency's job to go ahead and all the ducks are in a row, and that would be a question. But it's yes and no. I know it's like a wishy-washy answer. It's not transfer in the traditional way that we think of transfer in the ways that we just discussed, but it's still possible in that you can apply through the same program.
Excellent. Let us know in the chat, Ebony, if that answered your question or if you have any follow-up. And I think our last question comes from Charlene. She's looking for the types of lists that must be used first for the 3 standards. So she's saying one of them was the display used.
So actually all 3 are in regards to displaced employees or potentially or are about to be displaced employees. The 3 lists that I believe you're asked about are the preferred list, the roster, and the agency reduction transfer list, which now has the word transfer in it, but it's not a transfer list. So again, preferred list, reemployment roster, and agency reduction transfer list, or we often refer to it as ARDL. Those 3 lists are what we call reemployment lists. So if an employee may be displaced through no fault of their own, to maybe perhaps an agency restructure or reorganization, or they are in fact displaced, they will, in many cases, become active on these reemployment lists. And the way that civil service law was written, those 3 reemployment lists supersede any other form of hiring, and this is always the case. If there are reemployment candidates showing in the system when an agency wants to fill, must review, if any, those reemployment candidates and once they've considered them, or if there are no current candidates in the reemployment system, then they may look at the typical 3 employment methods, which are ordinary transfer, the different sections we described, often examination, eligible list, or voluntary reinstatement. So it's tricky, but yes, and those 3 types of lists are what we refer to as reemployment lists.
Thank you. And I'm going to get to Isaac's question in just a moment, but Ebony was just, and I think the answer here is definitely yes. It can be a bit confusing. She's just wondering if she can call you at the Career Mobility office to get more information.
Yep, for everyone. I did go ahead and put the CMO's contact information in the chat, just in case you didn't have it handy elsewhere, no problem. If anything else comes up, I know this stuff keeps me up at night personally, so if anyone thinks of anything else in the meantime, you can definitely send us an email, go ahead and contact us by phone. I do want to give you all a heads up that our in-office attendance is currently a little bit limited due to, the pandemic, to be frank, but we do get emails a little bit faster. If you prefer phone, just go ahead. You can even send us an email to the email that we've indicated in the chat here, and you can just say, can someone please give me a call? That's a little bit easier because we have access to email from everywhere, but it's a little bit harder to access our community phone. So whatever you prefer, just reach out to us at any time. We're happy to talk to you, happy to work with you, whatever you need.
Thank you. I actually just moved back a slide since it has your contact information on it as well. I think our last question, and it comes from Isaac. He's weighing or confirming that the difference between competitive and non-competitive is just the test.
Pretty much, yes. So ultimately, like we said, there's the jurisdictional classes. There's competitive, non-competitive, labor, and exempt. In order to be competitive, it means, that your entry into state service at least was the examination, where you took an examination, you passed, your score became reachable on the list and then were appointed. Versus a non-competitive employee or labor or exempt employees that were not appointed and did not take an examination in order to be considered for that position. They instead just need to meet minimum qualifications of the position. And I see a follow-up properly that if you're non-competitive, you're not eligible for transfer, but you may be able to still apply to change titles. So, correct, non-competitive employees are unfortunately not eligible for transfer. So if you are non-competitive, you certainly may still move around, but the method would not be via transfer. You can, of course, always seek a new non-competitive appointment if you saw a vacancy and you met the minimum qualifications, and just simply be a process of applying to the position online. And if you meet the qualifications and you are the best candidate for the job, then I'm, certainly hopeful you'll be appointed. And you can still, of course, take open competitive examinations.
Excellent. Oh, a follow-up here. If self-state employment without a test, but later test and passes, do they then become competitive?
So it's hard to say. I mean, there is a scenario called provisional where that would apply. So you may have heard the term provisional. It's kind of halfway between temporary and permanent into a competitive appointment. It's hiring somebody with the understanding that they're going to take the exam when it comes out, pass it, and be reachable, so that they then be list appointed. So that's the only way that would be possible. However, if somebody is hired into a non-competitive position, and that's going to stay non-competitive, they can certainly, like Taylor had said to your previous question, they can certainly participate in examinations and be appointed into competitive titles off of the resulting list. But once an individual is in a position, or once an agency allocates a position for non-competitive, that is going to be non-competitive. And so it won't be able to change to competitive because it will have a specific exam for it, and non-competitive exams do not have exams for them. I know, I'm sorry.
No, I think that's helpful. Did I interrupt you, Tanja? I'm not sure.
Sorry, there's just a little background noise. I was in the office today, so just a little going on behind me, so I apologize if that's distracting. The only thing I did want to clarify is that you are non-competitive and you take an exam and you pass, fantastic, and then you are on the list, but you're not, you would not in fact be competitive until you were appointed off that list. So it's not necessarily enough to just take it. Your jurisdictional class wouldn't change just by taking and passing the exam. It would then be in fact being appointed from the list. So just to clarify that as well.
Yes, thank you.
And I see Isaac, yes, absolutely. Feel free to follow up with a phone call. It definitely is very helpful to discuss, I think, the more individual questions with them directly with the Career Mobility Office.